Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Cormer Productions, here to do another rewatch video of Quantum Leap, Season 3, Episode 3, Leap of Faith. The episode's description reads as follows. As a priest, Sam must save another priest from alcoholism and prevent a murder. The episode was directed by James Whitmore Jr. This is his second directorial stint with the series. He was last responsible for the classic episode in the second season, Jimmy. The episode was written by Donald P. Belzerio and Tommy Thompson. The last episode that Thompson was involved with was Leaping In Without a Net. The episode takes place on April 19th, 1963, and originally aired on October 12th, 1990. Before going any further, I will tell you a couple of things. One, this is not a spoiler-free video, so if you hadn't watched the episode, I highly recommend you go and check it out, and then watch my video. Secondly, if you like this video and want to support the channel, please like, share, and comment, as well as subscribing to my channel. After 3 absolutely classic episodes in a row, dating back to the second season finale, this one was definitely a noticeable dip in quality. However, going up against the last 3, there isn't any shame in that. The episode is still quite good, with some issues here and there. Scott Bakula in this one is very subdued, for the most part. I'm not totally sure why, but I do have some theories. He just got off the first 2 episodes of the season having to carry a lot of the dramatic weight, and maybe taking a less active and more reactive role was a way to give him a break in this one. Truthfully, a good chunk of the dramatic heft in this one was carried by guest star Sandy McKeek, who plays Father John McRoberts, otherwise known as Father Mac. He is absolutely excellent in this episode. McPeak appeared in the movie Kelly's Heroes, an episode of Sequest DSB, and an episode of LA Law. He had 105 acting credits before dying on December 31st, 1997. My other theory about Bakula's performance in this one was a deliberate choice on his part, because of Sam's lack of comfort with being a priest, not knowing how to be a priest, and finding himself in the middle of a weird, uncomfortable situation. I'm not saying it's a bad performance, but he definitely feels on the sideline with a more passive role for the most part. Dean Stockwell, meanwhile, gets some solid dramatic material here as Al, but that's something we will get into later. There are definitely things to say about that. It's also quite interesting that Dean Stockwell is barely in this episode. Sam leaps in and finds himself in the middle of a wedding ceremony, having leaped into the priest. The couple is really impatient to be told that they can kiss. Kind of rude about it, to be honest with you. Oh boy! When we come back from the credits, the bride and the groom are kissing for a really long time. Hey guys, this is a church. Maybe cut that out. We cut to Al standing outside, making it his first appearance at the 2-minute and 51-second mark. Doesn't quite beat his earliest appearance, which was in the episode Honeymoon Express back in Season 2. Though one wonders why he bothered at all, as we won't see him again for a while. Sam encounters the Moncelli sisters after the fact, critiquing his performance, most of which was not actually Sam. That didn't happen until almost pretty much the end. One of them is played by Erica Yohn, who has the distinction of playing the mom in 3 of the American Tail movies. She has 91 acting credits and died on January 27th, 2019. The other is played by Penny Stanton, who appeared with Johnny Five in Short Circuit, an episode of Murphy Brown, and Northern Exposure. 155 acting appearances for her. She beat out her on-screen sister to the exit as she died 20 years earlier on May 12th, 1999. Father Mac saves Sam by approaching and asking, "Didn't Frank do a heck of a job?" He asks him to join him in the office, but before Sam leaves, he can't help but embarrass himself one more time by saying it was nice to meet them, when apparently he has seen them more than a few times. They comment as Sam leaves that he is hopelessly lost. No kidding on that one. In John's office, it becomes clear that he only wanted Sam there to rescue him from the Moncelli sisters. He's instantly going for a bottle of booze, real quick, as soon as he walks in the door, basically, which is a narrative shorthand for troubled character, which he very much is. He offers Sam some for the nerves, and Sam declines. And I like how Sandy McPeak delivers the line, "liquid courage." If the booze wasn't a flashing light that this is a troubled man, his delivery of the line is an even further hint. He picks up a newspaper with the headline, "Youth Hit by Train." Wow, that's extremely subtle. Is this a tabloid newspaper, or is this an actual legitimate newspaper? Because that headline is terrible. Anyway, John says he baptized the boy, watched him grow up, and now he has to bury him. The kid was only 12 years old. He throws the paper down, and Sam picks it up and starts reading. John says he should have known it was coming. Sam is mystified by that comment. How can anyone see something like that coming? An accident. John says that they both know it was no accident. He had been walking those tracks all his life. He didn't just fall in front of that train. Sam tries to come up with a pearl of wisdom, almost says accident again, that the kind of thing is hard to accept, especially when it happens to someone so young. Sam asks him if he learned that at the seminary school. Sam goes back and forth between yes and no multiple times. You're not off to a great start this leap, Sam. John clearly is a troubled man who is having a crisis of faith, and Sandy McPeak is playing him very well. We cut to the funeral of the kid. Sonny, by the way, the kid's name is Sonny. As Father Mac is performing the ceremony, we meet Tony and Joey Pronti as we cut further away from the funeral. Tony is trying to steal something from someone else's car, while his younger brother is telling him that he doesn't need it. But Tony isn't taking it because he wants it. Tony isn't taking it because he needs it, but because he wants it. We aren't yet certain how these two fit into the narrative, but we get the sense that Tony is damaged goods, while his brother has a bigger heart. Tony is played by Danny Nucci, who I'm not overly fond of as an actor. He does okay here, for the most part. He has appearances in the movie Titanic as Jack's ill-fated friend, though I suppose Jack was also ill-fated. He was in an episode of House MD in the first season, an episode titled Mob Rules, as a mob lawyer who doesn't want his brother testifying against a mob. House is a series I'm considering covering when my time with the show has come to an end. He did have one role that I liked him in, and that was his stint in Crimson Tide. He has an even 100 acting credits and one directorial stint, doing an episode of The Fosters, which he also starred in. Joey, meanwhile, is played by Davy Roberts, who only has 6 acting credits, including Doogie Howser. Tony decides to crash the funeral, which, given the fact that he was wearing a suit, he was already doing, which is very, very nearby to them. John notices him and stops talking mid-sentence. The scene is interesting because we see Sam quietly reacting to what is unfolding. He doesn't know who Tony is, but he does notice Father Mac's reaction to him. Sam knows he is important or significant somehow, but has yet to figure out how. Father John eventually regains his stride and continues. Tony offers his condolences to the kid's mother, who is far from appreciative. She starts freaking out. Father John intervenes, asking Tony not to turn the funeral into a circus. Tony asks, "Why should I leave?" Sam steps in to say, "Because he's asking you to." Sam still doesn't know what the deal is here, but does know the impact that this person is having on the people in attendance. Tony eventually decides to leave, telling John, "See you around, Father." Joey sits back for a bit, looking at Sam, and looks like he wants to say something, but doesn't know what. Eventually defeated, he turns around and joins his brother. We cut to the church again, and see Al standing in exactly the same spot, 8 minutes after his first appearance. He actually talks to Sam this time. Sam mentions that he saw Al earlier, and asks him where he went. Maybe he went and caught a movie or a show. Actually, that prompts a question. How far can Al actually travel around town, or indeed the world, away from Sam? What's the range? Surely it's not unlimited. Can he be 2 states away catching a show? Not sure the show ever addresses that question. Al avoids Sam's question and asks if priests drive in limos all the time. Sam responds, "Only when you have to bury someone." Al is chagrined. He asks who died. Sam tells him, a 12-year-old kid named Sonny. "You don't know any of this already, Al?" "Al, you're starting to earn your Admiral Useless nickname I gave you." Sam asks why he's there. Al starts giving him biographical information, but Sam is getting impatient, telling Al to get to the point. Is he there to prevent a murder? Because if so, it's a little late. This is another instance of asking, why wasn't this kid worth saving? The same question that I would ask about Thou Shalt Not, though I appreciated that episode, and Good Night, Dear Heart. Why not leap in to prevent that murder? Saving the kid, Sonny, would also probably have the side effect of saving John's soul and life. As it turns out, Father Mac is going to be killed in the next 36 hours. Sam asks, why would anyone want to kill a priest? Al suggests that avoiding the death penalty is plenty of motive to want to kill someone, especially a priest. John and the kid that died, Sonny, were the only witnesses to a robbery in which someone else died. And what do you know? The killer was Tony Pronti. Okay, So, here I have a question. What is Tony doing walking around? He is the suspect, the main one, apparently, in a robbery which resulted in somebody's death. He has a trial upcoming pretty soon, apparently. So, why isn't he in jail? Yes, generally speaking, you are offered the option of bail in our current system. But I'm finding it difficult to believe that Tony could pay the bail. Maybe there's just a difference between current day and the time period we're talking about here. And if someone has any insight into how this makes sense at all, feel free to let me know. Sam heads back into the church, and Al quickly nopes out of there. Al is clearly having some type of issue, but we don't know what it is yet. Inside, John tells Sam that the one thing he has to remember about the job is that things are never as good or as bad as they seem. A curiously optimistic point of view that I don't think he actually believes at this time. And speaking of things looking bad, a cross from above starts to fall. Sam notices and pushes John out of the way, while we hear a musical cue that I last remember hearing in A Portrait for Troyan. Not necessarily a good episode to remind me of. We cut to Sam and John talking to the cops. Sam isn't acting rationally. He wants the cops to go out and arrest Tony Pronti, despite having no evidence whatsoever that he was responsible. The cop doesn't buy it, nor should he really, despite that of course being the truth. He would love to get Tony off the streets, but he can't help other than posting a cop near the church, which is a precaution that should have already been in place. John is the only witness in a case about murder, so you figure they already would have been trying to protect him. But whatever. John goes for a drink. Sam starts to say he knows it's not his place, but doesn't he think his drinking is getting a little out of hand? John ends up cutting him off. Nope, it is not your place, so shut the heck up. I mean, he doesn't exactly say that, but he might as well. We cut to Sam in a taxi, taking a cab to a bar. A ride the cab driver ultimately doesn't charge him for, because he already feels guilty for taking him there in the first place. Sam is going there to talk to Tony. A priest walks into a bar. Nope, that's not the beginning of a joke. It's what actually happens here. Tony, not surprisingly, is a jerk when Sam says he needs to talk to him. He accuses Tony of trying to kill Mac. And right behind him suddenly appears Father Mac. Tony attacks them, and much to everyone's surprise, Sam takes him out with ease. Fighting skills that you wouldn't figure a priest would have. Cut to Sam and John on the train tracks. John followed him in the bar, having a feeling where Sam was going. Beautiful scene, by the way, set against a thunderstorm. Though it is weird that while we see rain, neither John and Sam are getting wet. It's here we learn that Tony and Joey are brothers. Though I've already revealed that much earlier in this video, but that's where we learn about it in this episode. And their father died when Tony was just 12. The mother took up drinking and took off. Gives some insight into why he became what he did. Joey, according to John, is a good kid. And Sam suggests maybe if they can get away from Tony, he might have a chance. And by the way, as tragic as this backstory is, it does not justify what Tony does throughout the episode and before this. They arrive at the spot where Sonny was killed. We have a beautiful monologue delivered by Sandy McPeak. This is his episode. Back at the church, we learn that Father John was a war hero. A war hero, a teacher, a boxing, and a priest. He's had quite an interesting life. John has been hitting the bottle hard, and while Sam talks about what they could do tomorrow, John falls asleep. Sam covers him up and leaves the room. In the gym, Sam runs into Al. Where the heck have you been? Up to this point, we have barely seen him. It's here that we learn what his problem is. He tells the story about his father coming back and bringing him and his sister back together until he got sick and died. Al was at the church praying every day, and he died anyway. Okay, nice scene for Dean Stockwell, but it is a retcon for his character. Back in the first season episode, The Right Hand of God, Al had no issues with hanging around in a church. And that was also the Catholic religion, so that is not a factor. Nor did he have any issues in Thou Shalt Not. So this is a character detail we're inventing for this episode that isn't backed up and is in fact actively contradicted by prior episodes. It's used to good effect, but also limits Al's participation in this one. I'm thinking the script was written as a way to give Dean Stockwell and Scott Bakula a break after being so heavily featured in the last couple of episodes, with some very heavy scenes. And let's face facts, these two carry this series. they are the only two regular that are in a lot of scenes, so giving them a break every once in a while is a good idea. Al leaves, and eventually Sam notices he's being spied on by Joey, who wants Sam to convince Father Mac not to testify. Obviously, this goes nowhere. Joey just wants things to go back to the way they were before things got complicated. Tony wasn't always like this. When his father died, Tony got mean. Al'sPlace.com says in their review of this episode that it's easy to feel sympathy for Father Mac, but harder to feel it for Tony Pronti, whose life is quite tragic when you break it down. But as I said earlier, it does not justify the things that he does. We cut to Father Mac teaching the kids boxing. Al is basically useless in this scene, forcing Sam to ask, how come sometimes you know things and other times you don't? Hey, that's a very good question, Sam. Sam runs into the future Rocky, a young Sylvester Stallone, and unknowingly gives him the idea for punching meat that shows up in that movie. Here's our kiss with history in this episode. Eventually, Sam and Mac end up in the ring together. Sam's trying to convince him to leave town until the trial. This doesn't go well. Mac punches him down, telling him that he's never run from anything in his life. He fights the fight his own way. Sam, showing some of the skills he picked up from So Help Me God, knocks Mac to the ground and says to him, if I didn't know any better, I would think you want to die. Mac is clearly angry, tells Sam that his sermon is over and he needs to go take confession now. Sam, in anger, tells him that he will do it for him, and Mac just stays on the mat as Sam walks away. We cut to a scene that is laughably bad. Tony loads a gun, and Joey is trying to convince him that he doesn't need to do this. The writing isn't bad, but the acting from both Danny Nucci and Davey Roberts is. It's just so melodramatic, and with the wild gesturing they are doing, the scene is almost hard not to laugh at. On top of that, the whole scene is weirdly staged and blocked and filmed. Davey Roberts is mostly decent throughout the episode, and Danny Nucci has his moments. None of them are in the scene. We learn in this scene that their dad actually died by his own hands, committing suicide. We cut to Al and Sam. There's just one small hitch in Sam taking confession for Father Mac. Sam doesn't know how to do it. He only said he would because he was angry and because he wanted Father Mac to reflect on trying to stay alive. Al suggests to forgive everyone and decides not to be any more helpful than that. Sam goes into the confessional and has the bad luck of being there for Tony Pronti's confession, which really is just a pretext for him to try and kill Father Mac. Sam falls out of the confession booth after being shot, and it looks like he was struck in the head. A woman screams. Al comes back to find Sam laying there with a head wound. He tells God that he can't take Sam. He's done too much, and he begins to pray for the first time in many, many years. Father Mac enters the scene, and Sam comes to. Father Mac demands to know who did this, and the older man tells him it was Tony. Father Mac runs off, presumably to kill Tony. Al tells him that Ziggy had it wrong. He wasn't there to stop Tony from killing Mac, but from Mac killing Tony. Actually, I'm not sure that's accurate. This set of circumstances only happened because Sam was there. If not for Sam, Mac would have been the one in the confession and probably killed right then and there. Ziggy says Sam is only stunned and will be fine. Sam gets to his feet and proceeds to go after Mac. Father Mac has taken Tony to the tracks where Sonny was killed. At gunpoint, he holds Tony on the tracks and wants him to confess to the crime, a confession which surely would not hold up in court. A train starts to come, but Mac won't let him off the tracks. Tony tries, but Father Mac fires a warning shot. Sam, driving fast in the scene, runs to the track, tells him, don't do this, let the justice system take care of it. But it won't, because Mac didn't see the crime, only Sonny did. He only said he did because Sonny was afraid, apparently justifiably so. Sam stands on the track in front of Tony. Mac says Tony isn't worth it, but Sam isn't doing it for Tony. He's doing it for Mac, to save his soul and to prevent him from committing murder. Tony confesses almost last minute, and Sam knocks him off the track. We cut to the next morning, where Father Mac is punching a bag. He's quit drinking, and he's thanking Sam for stopping him from doing the unthinkable. Mac gets ready for Mass, and Al tells him that Mac ends up just fine. He's there for another 20 years. Tony doesn't end up hanging. He does some serious time, but when he gets out, he makes something of his life. Meanwhile, we see Joey with Father Mac, and Al thinks Joey is in good hands. Al tells Sam that he did a hell of a job, and Sam tells Al that he did as well. which confuses Al. What did he do? And Sam tells him that he prayed for him. And Sam weeps. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the episode. A good episode, all in all, though it does have a few problems here and there. Featuring a standout performance by Sandy McPeak, who makes Father Mac a memorable character within the series. The next time we meet, we will talk about One Stroke Over the Line, which is another dip in quality, but still a decent episode. If you like this video and want to support the channel, there are a number of ways to do so. You can follow me on Twitter at Core Productions. You can join my Corman Productions Facebook page. You can buy something from the Corman Productions store on Zazzle. You can buy me a coffee, which is a new way to support content creators such as myself. And of course, you can like, share, and comment on this video, as well as subscribing to my channel. This is Dave from Corman Productions, signing off.